Ernest Scared Stupid, Hocus Pocus, two very similar movies. Who's gonna win? Ladies and gentlemen, non-binary, gender fluid, and everybody else in between, welcome to Box Office Battles. A show where we pit two similar movies together, head-to-head, one-on-one, baby, and see who comes out on top. Today's episode, children's horror movies, Ernest Scared Stupid, and Hocus Pocus. Let's get into it. In this fight, we have 3 rounds. The first round is plot. We're going to analyze the catalyst of the story and see how it flows. The second round is of the players, who makes up the stories and who the villains are. And the final bloody round is audience reception, box office numbers, and legacy. A great way to end the fight. All right, let's start this train up, baby. Ernest Scared Stupid released in 1991, and Hocus Pocus released in 1993. The two films bear quite a few similarities, of course both being 90s Halloween-themed children's movies by Disney. Each of the films were glossed over during the original release, but now both have cult followings. Both movies follow a group of kids, Ernest included, who accidentally awaken an ancient evil entity that go on to terrorize their respective towns. Let's see what happens in each installment. Starting with Ernest Scared Stupid, the story is a fun little Halloween story for the kids, and it does a wonderful job. The plot is as followed. Sometime in the 19th century, we see the demonic troll Trantor, and he's feasting on children's energies by turning them into wooden dolls. The people of the town capture him while he's trying to feast on a little girl, and they bury him alive underneath an oak tree. Led by the pack of townfolk is Phineas Worrell, Ernest P. Worrell's ancestor. Trantor then places a curse on the Worrell family that says he can only be released the night before Halloween by someone in the Worrell family. Another part of the curse is that with each generation of the Worrell family, they will continue to get dumber and dumber and dumber until the dumbest member of the family, Ernest P. Worrell, lets the troll out. We fast forward 100 years and we see Ernest, who is now a garbage man. As creepy as it sounds, Ernest has a bunch of middle school friends. Yeah, we're not going to justify that, folks. Anyhow, his friends Kenny, Elizabeth, and Joey built a haunted house, which then gets destroyed by a bunch of bullies. So they go to Ernest to see if he will help them build a new, more secure fort. Ernest then has a schizophrenic moment and goes through 15 different personalities to tell the kids he will absolutely help them, emphasis on kids, build a new fort. So Ernest and company set forth to find the perfect place to build their tree fort, and unbeknownst to them, they build the structure on top of the very tree that houses Trantor the Troll's dormant body. When the local witch lady, Old Lady Hackmore, finds out about this, she comes and crashes their party, and angrily storms off. Ernest decides to follow her home to see if he can calm her down. For some reason, Old Lady Hackmore decides to tell Ernest about the full story of Trantor the Troll. I mean, of course, why wouldn't you? Why would you not tell the dumb descendant of the Worrell family about the curse about a dumb descendant of a Worrell family? It just makes no sense. Of course, when Ernest learns of the legend, he runs back and tells the kids about it, which, you guessed it, inadvertently releases the troll. The weather starts getting spooky, so everybody goes home, leaving Ernest alone in the treehouse. In a very spooky scene for kids, Ernest gets confronted by the troll and kicks a garbage pail over, spilling some milk, which scares the troll away. For now. A clue for how to defeat the trolls later on in the film. Elizabeth, Joey, and Kenny split up in the woods and go their separate ways. Bad idea, kids. Joey is walking home when he hears some noises in the nearby woods. You see, Joey slips down a muddy hole, right? And as he's struggling to get up, he's relieved to hear Ernest P. Worrell's voice helping him. Except he looks up and he realizes it's not Ernest, man. It's Trantor the Troll, dude, and turns Joey into a wooden doll, marking our first casualty of the film. Ernest runs all the way to the sheriff's house, who is Kenny's father, and explains the troll situation to him. Of course, Sheriff Binder does not believe him. Ernest takes matters into his own hands and turns to Old Lady Hackmore for help and gears up to fight the troll. Meanwhile, Trantor watches on and captures his second victim, a boy on a skateboard. Tony goes to Tom and Bobby, some local salesmen. They sell Ernest a bunch of troll traps. Of course they're fake. They tried to swindle my man. One of those traps included is a fake dumpster trap that traps the troll in the dumpster, right? But Ernest accidentally traps the mayor's sons in the dumpster and then brings the dumpster to like City Hall or something, and the mayor freaks out because his sons are captured in this dumpster, and that eventually gets Ernest fired from his job as a garbage man. I'm just surprised they didn't lock Ernest up for being out of his mind. Ernest, Kenny, and Elizabeth return to Old Lady Hackmore's house and learn that only a, quote, heart of a child and a mother's care can defeat the troll. Later that night, on Halloween, Elizabeth is lying in bed, and in the scariest scene in the movie, she rolls over to see Trantor the troll in bed with her, and she gets taken by Trantor. We see Kenny and his friend walking to the town Halloween party, and Trantor uses Elizabeth's voice to lure Kenny away, and ends up taking his friend as his fourth victim, and then proceeds to chase Kenny all over town. Meanwhile, at the Halloween party, Trantor shows up and crashes the joint, and gets on stage and takes the mayor's son as his fifth victim. Trantor and Ernest begin to tussle, which ends with Ernest's dog, Rimshot, being turned into a wooden doll, and Ernest being thrown into an ice cream stand, and the dairy in the ice cream again scares Trantor away. Kenny then realizes that the mother's care quote from Old Lady Hackmore means milk. That is kind of goofy, but then he rallies up all the neighborhood kids to steal squirt guns and milk from the local shop to go fight the trolls. Naturally. Back at the treehouse, Trantor summons his army of trolls with the energy he took from the kids. And the entire town basically shows up to fight the trolls, and they are quickly overwhelmed. Until the kids show up and start destroying the trolls with the milk from their little guns. Trantor escapes back underneath his tree grave and summons stronger evil powers from the underworld, making him invincible to milk. Kenny runs up and tries to defeat Trantor with milk, and that doesn't work, and Trantor turns him into a wooden statue, marking Kenny as his seventh victim of the film. During the final battle between Ernest and Trantor, Ernest realizes that unconditional love, the heart of a child, can defeat Trantor. How he figured that out, I have no idea. Ernest then, and I shit you not, picks up Trantor, starts dancing with him, and kisses him on the nose, which causes Trantor to explode. Yeah. All the wooden dolls are restored, and everyone is reunited with their families. Wow. What a story. And a spooky one for the kids. Let's move on to Hocus Pocus and see how that stacks up. On Halloween night in 1693 in Salem, Massachusetts, we see Thackeray Binks witnessing his little sister, Emily, being taken away into the woods by the Sanderson sisters. 3 witches who are named Winifred, Sarah, and Mary. Binks confronts the witches but fails to save his sister. The witches wanted to steal her life energy to keep them young. The witches also turned Binks into a black cat who is cursed to live forever with the guilt for not saving his sister. The townsfolk eventually capture the witches and hang them in the town square. Winifred casts a curse on the town that will resurrect the Sanderson sisters on a full moon on Halloween night if a virgin lights the black flame candle. Very, very similar to Ernest Scared Stupid. The newly cursed Binks decides to guard the witch's cottage to ensure the witches never come back. 300 years later on Halloween 1993, Max, our main character, has to take his little sister out trick-or-treating, where they run into Max's new classmate, Allison, who he has a crush on. The 3 decide to all hang out and get spooky and visit the old witch's cottage, which is now an abandoned museum. Of course, Max, a virgin, decides to light the black flame candle and let the witches out. Because, of course, why would the evil entity stay dead? I have no idea. The witches attempt to suck the life out of Danny, Max's little sister, but Max comes to the rescue and the crew escape. While escaping, Max steals Winifred's spellbook on the advice of the speaking immortal Binks. He takes the crew to an old cemetery where they are protected from the witches since it's hallowed ground. Of course, the witches show up and resurrect Winifred's former lover, Billy Butcherson, from the grave and sends him after the kids. The witches chase the kids all across town using Mary's enhanced sense of smell, which is kind of weird that you can smell kids, but whatever. Winifred reveals that if they don't suck the life out of at least one child, they will turn to dust when the sun comes up. I'm not sure why they're chasing Max and crew around, because it's Halloween. It's not that hard to find one random kid running around, you know what I'm saying? I don't know what their infatuation with Max and the crew is. After luring the witches to the high school, Max and company trap the witches in a giant pottery oven and burn them alive, which is just absolutely brutal. Of course, the witch's curse just revives them again. The kids open up the spell book, not realizing the witches survived, looking for a spell to reverse the curse on Binks. The open spell book sends a full-blown GPS signal to the witches so they can come get Max, kidnap Danny, grab the book, and get out of here. Max and Allison trick the witches into believing that sunrise is an hour early. Thinking they are done for, the witches panic, which allow Max, Danny, and Allison and Binks to escape. Back at the cemetery, Billy Butcherson catches up to the kids and takes Max's knife and frees his mouth from the stitches that enclosed it, and insults Winifred before joining Max and company. Since the witches can't touch the ground, they attack from the air and snatch up Danny, and Winifred uses the last vial of potion to suck the soul out of Danny. But luckily, Binks knocks the potion out of her hand, which Max catches and drinks, forcing the witches to take him instead of Danny. The sun starts to rise just before Winifred finishes sucking the life out of Max. Max and Winifred start fighting in the air, which causes Winifred to fall onto the hollowed ground, and she turns to stone. As the sun rises, Mary and Sarah are turned into dust, alongside Winifred's stone body. Luckily for Binks, the death of the witches breaks his curse, allowing him to finally die and freeing his soul. He then reunites with his sister, and they both head off into the afterlife while Billy returns to his grave. And the crew lives happily ever after. Until the sequel, of course. Wow, what another wonderfully spooky children's movie. Very similar to Ernest Scared Stupid. Let's check out the results and see who won round one. Well, comparing the two stories is tough because, like I said, they are both incredibly similar. A group of unsuspecting children resurrect an evil entity and have to band together and fight it all across town. Believability is out the door for these two movies, but they are both fun stories that aren't too out of this world. Ernest Scared Stupid is a little more spooky in terms of jump scares, but Hocus Pocus is more of a well-rounded Halloween story. Hocus Pocus is Halloween, but then again, so is Ernest Scared Stupid because they both happen on Halloween night. This is a majorly tough decision for me because I do love Ernest Scared Stupid, but Hocus Pocus is Halloween, man. It's set in Salem, Massachusetts, and Hocus Pocus's Halloween is just a little bit better than Ernest Scared Stupid. Plus, Ernest Scared Stupid couldn't even get pumpkins in the movie because it was filmed out of season. Salem is Halloween, man, so I think this round is going to have to go to Hocus Pocus. All right, let's move to round two, baby. Let's start off the second round of this brutal battle by discussing the players of Ernest Scared Stupid. Leading the pack, we have the insanely talented funny man Jim Varney, who plays the Ernest character in 9 films and in over 900 commercials. So by this point, the Ernest character is at its best. Also interesting to note that Jim Varney is actually a Shakespearean actor. Leading the kids is Kenny, played by Austin Nagler, who has pretty much stayed low-key minus a couple other movie credits. Trantor the Troll was played by Jonah Moscartolo. He did a fantastic job acting in that huge troll outfit. Nowadays, my man is a personal trainer at a gym. Old Lady Hackmore is played by the very famous, very legendary Eartha Kitt. She had a Hollywood career that lasted over 60 years. She played Batwoman and Catman. Batwoman and Catman. Oh my God. She played Catwoman and Batman. She played Madame Zeroni in Holes. I mean, good Lord, that gets major points for Ernest Scared Stupid. Shea Astar played Elizabeth, who also seems to be the only one of the children actors that went on to have a decent career in Hollywood, playing a semi-regular character in the sitcom Third Rock from the Sun. Moving on to Hocus Pocus, we have a few heavy hitters in this movie. First and foremost, we have Bette Midler, who is a legendary singer and actress. Next up, we have Sarah Jessica Parker, who is a wonderful actress, mostly known for playing Carrie in Sex and the City. Next, we have Kathy Najimy. Don't even know if I'm saying that correctly. She plays Mary Sanderson, who has done more movies than I can count. Max is played by Omri Katz, who didn't stick to acting. He now owns a marijuana company. Danny is played by Thora Birch, who has held steady work as an actress since 1988. Lastly, we have Vanessa Shaw, who played the heartthrob Allison, who has also held steady work as an actor since her Hocus Pocus days. The cast of both are pretty nicely put together. Nothing extraordinary, but still great. I think the casting of Ernest Scared Stupid seemed to have more fun filming together, and their chemistry seemed to be more apparent than the cast of Hocus Pocus. So for round 2, we're going to give it to Ernest Scared Stupid because the magic of Jim Varney on screen really sends it over the edge. Plus, you add Eartha Kitt in there, and it's just magic. Although the cast of Hocus Pocus was great, I just think Ernest Scared Stupid just did a wee bit better. But like I said, both fantastic. All right, before we end this brutal, bloody fight and go into round 3, let's take a break and hear from our sponsors. Oh, folks, I'm so sorry I didn't see you there. I was too busy watching this wonderful episode of Box Office Battles. If you want to support me, head on over to patreon.com/officialjoeyc for all your exclusive Joey C needs. We have exclusive movie reviews, exclusive weekly check-ins, exclusive behind-the-scenes videos. It's a fantastic time. So head on over to patreon.com/officialjoeyc. I'd love to have you. All right, back to Box Office Battles, baby. Going into the third and final round, we are 1-1, baby. We are all tied up. 1 to Ernest Scared Stupid and 1 to Hocus Pocus. This final round, we're going to look at audience reception, box office numbers, and legacy. All right, let's get into Ernest Scared Stupid. This 1991 absolute classic made about $14.1 million at the box office on a $9.6 million budget. That's not too shabby. The film actually got pretty poor reviews, but it did receive credit for creating some scenes that were very scary for children. Taking a look at the ratings on Rotten Tomatoes, this movie received 17% on the tomato meter and a 51% audience score. That's not too bad. In terms of legacy, it's important to note that nowadays it's kind of considered a cult classic. Moving on to Hocus Pocus, this 1993 film made about $45 million at the box office on a $28 million budget. Again, not too shabby. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film scored a 39% from critics on the tomato meter and a 72% audience rating. Now, of course, Hocus Pocus did score higher with audiences, but it is also more of a well-known film. It's important to note that when they both released, they both received pretty poor reviews, but now they're both considered cult classics. This is a tough one, folks. Before we get into the final results of this crazy battle between Ernest Scared Stupid and Hocus Pocus, I asked some of my creator friends what they think of both films. All right, let's hear it. Roll the tape, folks.
I've seen Hocus Pocus more. They used to play it a lot when I was a kid in school when there was like a movie day.
This is probably one of the hardest things I will have to do because these are two staples for me when it comes to the holiday season, October.
We've got Citizen Kane versus Happy Gilmore. Now, it's kind of an odd comparison.
I don't like that movie as much as a lot of people, probably because I was forced to watch it so much.
But realistically, though, only one of them has become an annual rewatch and a part of my life.
Now, Ernest Scared Stupid is by far the best Ernest movie. Well, actually second best, because Ernest Goes to Jail features an absolute stellar dual performance from Jim Varney.
On one hand, you've got arguably the greatest film ever made. On the other, you've got Adam Sandler. What?
I've only seen Ernest Scared Stupid a few times as a kid, but it really stuck with me, and I really enjoy that movie.
You can't deny the feminist power of 3 badass bitches coming back and trying to take over the town.
Bette Midler is amazing. Even Sarah Jessica Parker is hysterical. The kid's a little bland, and it's fine. It's a serviceable plot that features some weirdness with a candle.
Hocus Pocus, though, is a film that I have watched every single October for the last 25 years, and I love it. I love the characters. I love the setting.
And you know what? Hocus Pocus gave us Hocus Pocus 2, which was awful. It was one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
What do you mean wrong movies?
I used to go nuts for Ernest movies. I used to do Ernest binges where I'd rent all the Ernest movies. I'm one of the few living people to have actually seen Ernest Goes to Africa. Yes, I do remember that one, and it is just as racist as you probably guess it would be.
Ernest Scared Stupid gave us Ernest Goes to Africa. which is one of the best movies I've ever seen.
I love Jim Varney in the Ernest movies, but I don't beg my girlfriends to dress up as him in the Trolls for Halloween.
Hocus Pocus?
The Sanderson sisters are amazing to watch. I love them all, and the soundtrack is fantastic.
I don't hum songs from the Ernest movies in the shower.
Ernest what?
Ernest Scared Stupid is a classic in the way that Jim Varney just brings joy to you every single time he's on screen. You know, doesn't matter if it's from this movie or any of the other Ernest movies. Jim Varney is a legend.
As much as Ernest P. Worrell is important as a character, I say Hocus Pocus is the better movie, especially if you're an adult and a human being.
No, I've never seen either of those movies.
Hocus Pocus just has the staying power and the intergenerational attraction that makes it the best.
So I think I'm Team Ernest, even though I have more experience with Hocus Pocus. I'm Ernest all the way.
I got to give it slightly to Ernest Scared Stupid because the year it came out, the feeling you get watching Jim Varney on screen, RIP to an absolute legend.
Well, I don't know why I'm talking about him.
I've actually seen Hocus Pocus in the last 10 years and don't just rely on my nostalgic feelings to tell me it's good. So, Hocus Pocus, what do you think, Chell? She agrees. Hocus Pocus for us.
The person who chose me to cover this was also on our show talking about this movie, so you should check that out. And Joey, always a pleasure to do this. So I'm going to give the point and the win to Ernest Scared Stupid. But they're both amazing. Go check them both out.
Ernest Scared Stupid. There you go. That's your better movie. Jesus Christ.
Putting my own personal bias aside, which is quite hard, I think the winner of this box office battle is, drumroll please, Hocus Pocus. Hocus Pocus pulled ahead in the plot round due to its wonderful Halloween settings. Things got tied up when Ernest Scared Stupid pulled ahead in the players round. But the third round is what pushed Hocus Pocus over the edge. It's very hard to deny the insane legacy that Hocus Pocus has. And it really just blows Ernest Scared Stupid out of the water. It pains me to say that because I do think Ernest Scared Stupid is a better Halloween spooky film, but there's more to this fight than spookiness, dude. So folks, I hope you enjoyed this wonderful episode of Box Office Battles. Hocus Pocus came out on top, defeating Ernest Scared Stupid. What two movies do you want to see me pit together next? Because I'll do it. So folks, with that, I leave you with two things. Thanks for watching. I greatly appreciate it. Keep your eye out for the next video, episode, movie, live stream, whatever it is, man. Listen, cherish the precious moments, be love, and stay, dude. I'm out of here. See you later. Good Lord. It's about 80 degrees in here, and I got to go turn my AC on. Alrighty.